Awesome. I'm now recording. Great. Well, thank you all of you for coming. It's great to see so many classrooms. We have heaps online as well. Essentially, I want to start off with an acknowledgement of country. I'd like to acknowledge the Ngunnawal and Ngambri people as the traditional custodians of the land upon which people in person are gathered here today. If you're elsewhere, I encourage you to find out whose lands you're on. If you are in Australia, you can just put that in the chat if you want, and pay your respects that way. I'd like to acknowledge elders past and present. And I'd also like to acknowledge that we live on stolen land, that Anusa and the Ancient Association continues to operate on stolen land, and that sovereignty was never ceded in this country. So today we'll be going through the class representative training. This training is pretty straightforward, to be honest. It basically is just taking you through a lot of key elements from the handbook, as well as other little bits and pieces of good information that we've learned over the years that Anusa has been administering this training. So that's sort of the first part. That'll take half an hour. There'll be a time for questions and discussion about that bit. And then the second part for sort of the last half hour, we aim to get this done within an hour. And if you have to go, obviously that's completely fine. But the second half is for 30 to 20 minutes or so. We'll be discussing some of the major campaigns that Anusa is working on at the moment. And so that's a bit of a different tact from what the training is. It's something that we haven't tried before. If you're a class that previously we haven't done it, but it's based on some of the feedback we get that people are just generally interested to know a little bit more about what Anusa does, and also helps perhaps connect what you might do with what the broader student union is doing across this university. And so I'll sort of explain that as we go. Again, I want to know this is the first time we've tried this, so it might not be perfect, but again, you'll have a chance for feedback on how this training is as well, so we can learn and improve for next semester and so on and so forth. So yeah, we'll get started. People online, please just raise your hand or something if there's a problem with the sound. Otherwise, we might try and keep questions to the end just to keep both modes sort of manageable for myself. So, there's the acknowledgement of country. Yeah. Yeah, that's the basic introduction. Essentially, this training, as I said, is for class representatives from across the ANU. So you'll all be in different courses and schools and colleges, and it is centralized training. To introduce myself, my name is Christian. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the president of Anusa this year, and I'm a fifth year arts law student. Cheeto, the vice president, you can introduce yourself. Yeah, so that was Cheeto, who uses she, her pronouns. She's a fourth year art student, just for the people online, and she's the vice president. So the president and vice president usually just help manage this, and we'll go into exactly what our roles are a little bit later, but we help oversee all of the functions of the association, and this is just one of them. So yeah, this training will explicitly cover what your role looks like, some of the specifics of what you might do during your time as a class representative. A lot of it will be about making sure you understand who to go to if there is a problem. We recognize that you're all volunteers, that you're all doing this in your spare time out of the goodness of your heart, but we don't expect you to, fix really big problems that happen in your college or in your course. There's no expectation of that. It is really just making sure that you know who to go to talk about and refer on issues. And if you do want to work on stuff, there's scope for that. And that's sort of what the second half of this discussion or this training is going to be about. But just making sure that you are, and I'll emphasize it multiple times, it's really important to have boundaries in this role. You are not a pastoral care support. You don't have to manage people's personal problems, all of that kind of stuff. You're here for general advocacy on behalf of your class. And yeah, to emphasize, the class rep handbook really is your Bible. It has all the contacts, all the information. It's very comprehensive. So if there's anything you don't understand and my question doesn't answer, my answer doesn't answer your question, just go there and that'll have a lot of the information. Yeah. So Yeah, so what is a class representative? There are three broad categories, as you can see on the screen. It's about support, consultation, and voice. So to sort of talk about what that looks like in practice, the convener should be putting your contact details somewhere on your Wattle page or anywhere else. If you have a class group chat or a Facebook group, that kind of stuff, it's also pretty good to just put yourself out there and say, hey, everyone, here's my email, here's who I am, here's my name. You can contact me if you have concerns about how the class is going. So that's sort of the first key thing. The second one is consultation. This one is a little more complex because it's sort of a much more active element. It's more you going out to talk to people. And that really depends on what is happening in your class. A lot of the time, you might not need to consult with everyone or, put out that kind of thing because frankly, your class just might be running fine. And there's a lot of times where your class is running fine. And it's important to note that academics, tutors, lecturers do a really great job at this university. And often when there are things going wrong, it's not their fault. It's more they don't have enough resources, they're not paid enough, they don't have enough time, they've got too many classes, those kinds of issues. And so when it comes to consultation, what the function is maybe more, there's a problem and you're not sure if a change in assessment for the exam period that was communicated by the course convener is the most appropriate form of new examination or new assessment. So you could then go and say, hey, we had an in-person exam, but now it's a digital. I don't think that that's appropriate for our class. That's a very good thing to then go and consult more broadly on. And we could talk about what that could look like in a little bit. Finally, voice. That is pretty intuitive. It's basically just making sure that we have people in every part of the university that are able to speak up for and with students. The ANU Students Association, where I'm from, and I'll go into what we do in a little bit as well, but we are the student union for students at the ANU. And what we do is try to give voice and try to give power and empower students to have a say in their university, in their education, and to feel like we are a part of our own university. And frankly, there's only 40 people on the Student Representative Council. There's only so much those people can do, which is why it's so important that there's a broader group of people that are able to provide that voice for students. So what does it look like a little more practically for what you might do? The first one is to just talk to your peers. The easiest way is through social media or digital communication, that kind of stuff. Make yourself visible, make sure people know. The course convener very explicitly has a duty per ANU policy to put your contact details, however you want to be contacted, on the Wattle page. Now, when you sign up or get elected, there's generally the expectation that that's your university number, email. I hope that's not a surprise to any of you. That's probably the way that's best for you to be contacted, just to also maintain, something along the lines of a professional relationship with anyone who emails you. You might be talking on personal forums like WeChat or WhatsApp or Facebook, but you don't necessarily want to be using that all the time. It's often best to use email. You do want to meet with your course convener. Again, that's something that they should be doing. But if they don't, it's okay for you after a lecture, after a tutorial, to go up and say, hey, I'm the class rep. It would be great if we could catch up and just make contact. You might not have any problems that early on in the class to raise, but that's okay. It's just good to get in contact and make sure that you know them, but importantly, that they know you. So if there is a problem later on in the semester, that they know who to go to. And that you know that you have some kind of a pre-existing relationship that you can then work with to raise an issue that you have. Now, the next thing is that often there will be quite serious issues, not often, sometimes in classes. When that happens, it is best that you bring those concerns to representatives that are in ANUSA, or that are elected to the ANU Students Association Student Representative Council. The reason for that is because often if you have a problem with the course convener, sometimes the problem might be of a nature that it is very difficult for you to resolve. Let's say that everyone in the class is very upset with an exam because with an assessment, because it was set as 3,000 words on the class document that's on the ANU website that everyone can see. And then you join the class, and in week 4, so this week, the course convener suddenly decides to make that week 8 assessment, 5,000 words. And that's, a pretty big difference in what is expected. And if there's no change in, say, how much that's worth, like that was worth 30%, for example, and that doesn't change, if it doesn't change any of the other assessments, if there's no explanation for why there is a big change in the word limit, that can be a little bit disconcerting. That might throw off people's ability to work in that time period because they might have taken into account only writing a certain sized essay. It's not the best example, but I'm thinking on my feet here. Essentially, the course convener might do that and then not really want to talk to you about why they've done it. That's sort of likely to happen. Again, to emphasize, there's probably good reasons why. They're probably stressed, overworked, underpaid, understaffed. So it's not about making it personal, but importantly, you might find yourselves unable to go any further. And if you're unable to go any further, there's not much that you can necessarily do in that situation without unnecessarily escalating it. And you don't want to be, frankly, we don't want to put you in a position where you are annoying your course convener. You're annoying the person that is also, marking your work. So a Danish Students Association has an executive. So that's a president, a vice president, a treasurer, a general secretary, an education officer, a welfare officer, and a clubs officer. So it's an eclectic range of things, but generally email the vice president or the president, and we'll be able to put you in contact or figure out the best path forward. And that's where you might come to us and say, okay, the course convener has done this thing. Everyone thinks it's really bad. We have a really big problem with it, but we don't know what to do. And that's where we can step in. The second group are college representatives. So every year, ANUSA elects or undergraduate students elect 2 college representatives per college for a total of 12. And that's because the College of Health and Medicine and the College of Science are actually joined into something called the Joint College of Sciences, just because in the undergraduate population, there aren't quite that many to be worth splitting it in 2, basically. Essentially, you email them, and I have email contacts that I'll put up later, but you email them and you say, I have this problem in a course that is in your college. So you email the College of Arts and Social Science representatives and you say, I don't know what to do, I need help. The college representatives are really great because they have direct relationships with the associate deans of education. So those are the people that kind of run the show in the college. They're the people that make all the nitty-gritty decisions, that oversee these kinds of issues. If there's a problem, people will go to them and say, this convener is acting inappropriately, isn't listening to students, is doing X, Y, Z. And the college representatives will be able to support you and take those issues to them. And sometimes you'll be able to go to them as well. Often the deans or other heads of schools, sort of higher up academics, will meet with all of the college representatives. Like they'll get everyone who's a class representative. They'll get all the class representatives in a room together and they'll say, all right, this is like a free lunch. I just want to hear your concerns about what is going on in the class. So that's another practical thing that might happen. It's good to bring any concerns or thoughts you might have, but that's another way that you might get in contact with the associate dean. But we do really recommend that you use and rely on what ANUSA does, because we do have that expertise and experience. And often if there's a problem you're experiencing, we've dealt with it before. A really common one are lectures that aren't recorded. It's something that comes up every year. Every lecture, with very few exceptions, needs to be recorded. And that means that sometimes conveners forget. That's fine. The expectation is that they film a new lecture for people that could not make the class in person. That is the expectation. And that's pretty consistent across the university. I think a couple of science courses and some language courses are the only exceptions that I know of. And finally, you'll see there the importance of the course convener as opposed to different tutors or lecturers. The course convener, as the name suggests, is responsible for the course, not like the tutor that you might get on with or a different lecturer that comes in. It's important if you have a problem with the course that you complain to the course convener, because they are the ones ultimately responsible. And they do get a little cranky if students are going and if a class rep goes and makes their complaint to someone that isn't actually running the class. Often, if you do go and say something to a tutor, they'll just say, sorry, you need to go talk to the course convener. But it's an important distinction. It's one that course conveners asked us to pass on. And so that's what I'm doing, but it is something important for everyone to remember. So yeah, that's sort of a brief overview of some of the practical things that you do. How should you do this? We do emphasize just working well with your academics, with the academics at the uni. Frankly, yeah, as I've said, if they do something wrong, it's probably done in good faith. It's probably not malicious. They're probably trying their best. We don't want to encourage people to go and shout or anything like that at this stage. If you have the preliminary, if you have a preliminary problem. So we really do emphasize that, and to show kindness and compassion to the staff at the ANU. It's just easy to work constructively. It's okay to go with a suggestion for what you think should be done instead. If they do change an assessment, you could say, oh, we think it needs to be changed back. Here's an alternative assessment that meets the same requirements, but it's a lot easier. Here's some adjustments to the assessment. Again, you might have mixed success, but it's important to maybe come with ideas for what you think would assuage the concerns of your cohort. Obviously, listen to students. If you think something's a really big problem, but everyone disagrees with you, that's maybe a point where you do need to reconsider your position and making sure you don't misrepresent the people that might have elected you. Yeah, pretty basic stuff. Like, you don't need to push yourself, but to really get in their face, but you don't need to be pushed around. And if they do act inappropriately, or they get, a bit in any way inappropriate, like they shout at you, their course competitors, that is, or anything like that, you don't need to engage with that. Again, you can come to Anusa, and we have processes that can help deal with that. And we have professional staff as well that can help deal with those issues. Yeah, so it's just some basic tips. It's mainly common sense, I would say. Yeah, so specifics of what kinds of things you might be looking for. The course content and structure is a really good one. The website on ANU will tell you what you're meant to be learning. If you turn up and you're learning something very different, well, that's something that's worth noting. If they misrepresent what they're teaching in the class, that is something that is quite significant. That doesn't happen often, but if it does happen, it's definitely worth raising. It's definitely worth actually escalating that one-on-one. Workload is a really big one. Again, the expectations should always be set out on the website. You should know what assessments you have to do. COVID has meant for the last few years, it has been a bit up in the air, but recently it has been stabilizing. And that means that particularly this year, it shouldn't be changing drastically. There shouldn't be exams that are going to be held a certain way, then changed into something completely differently midway through the course, which is frankly any point from now on. Teaching methods. Sometimes teachers do things in a bit of a funny way. They might have an off day, but sometimes they have a teaching style that rubs you the wrong way. Often that's a personal choice, and it's important to recognize just because the teacher or the lecturer doesn't quite connect with you doesn't mean there's a problem. But sometimes if all the students are raising an issue, it's okay to go and say, hey, we think that there might need to be some adjustments made. It's important to note that you don't want to personalize that. You don't want to make the lecturer feel personally attacked by that kind of thing. You just want to focus on key suggestions and those kinds of things. A really common one is that sometimes lecturers will just turn up, they'll turn on the PowerPoint, and they'll just start talking. People are like, whoa, I needed an introduction kind of thing. A really basic one is just to say to lecturers, this has happened a fair bit. When you start the lecture, can you just spend 2 minutes explaining what you will be learning today? And that's a really good one because it's related directly to what is said about courses on ANU's website, which is that there are expectations of what you will learn in every single course. So every week, there is something that you are being taught. And at the beginning of a lecture, the lecturer should say, this week, this is the thing I am teaching you about. It's a really simple one, but it's one that comes up probably the most regularly for that category. Assessment and feedback. Before the Monday of week 7, so that's sometime in September, you must get some form of feedback on some piece of work that you have done. That is an ANU policy. That means if you get to week 7 and you've handed in things, be they assessed or not assessed, and none of it has gone back to you with feedback, that is a point where you can go and say, hey, students deserve feedback on how they are going in this course. Now, it's pretty variable. It could be, a Waddle quiz for 10 questions. And if the 10 questions are marked incorrect or correct, and there's a brief explanation of why you got the question wrong, that's feedback, even if it's not assessed, because a lot of courses do have, quite diverse structures of assessment, and it's hard to box them all into specific types. But if you get nothing, definitely raise it, because every student deserves to know if they're doing well or not doing so well in understanding the course content. Suitable support for online learning where applicable. This is something that the Student Union has spent a lot more time on this year, because we are frankly concerned about the options for online learning. What we've heard is that a lot of classes do have an online tutorial, that their lectures are recorded, that kind of stuff. What feedback we've gotten is that it is really important we keep online options. A fact is that there are still 1,500 students in China at the moment that are unable to come back to Australia. So if there is a course where there are multiple tutorials and all of them are in person and they're not multimodal, you can't join from not in person, that's really concerning for us, because everyone deserves to be able to have an education. Secondary thing is that if you get COVID, you are still required to stay at home by legislation. And that means that for 7 days, you have to miss classes. And we think those people should have access to join a tutorial if they want. So that's something that we'll actually talk about a little bit more in the second half, but I did want to flag it because it is really important, and it is something that most course conveners really agree with us on, that people should be able to access this stuff online. Individual student issues. If someone comes to you and they say, I need an extension, I need a late withdrawal from a course, I need special consideration, I have personal problems, mental health, physical health, I have a personal dispute with the course convener, those issues are explicitly not your problem. And we want to make it really clear that we don't want you handling someone's personal details just because they approached you. Often people will come to you and say, because they don't know where to go, they'll say, I have a personal problem and I need help. And that's great. We want people to reach out. And that's where you come in and say, I cannot help you. And you should not, and we do not encourage it. Always pass them along to the student union. And there's two parts of ANUSA. The first part is we have our elected representatives, which I went over briefly before. But the second part is we have non-students who are full-time staff members. These are staff members who are, we have lawyers so that people can get legal advice. We have student assistance officers, so people will be able to go and get range with a whole range of issues. And that's who you'll contact the most. Our student assistance team can provide grocery vouchers for people in financial need. You can get up to $750 per semester if you're experiencing financial hardship. You can get assistance with any type of academic-based issue that you might be experiencing that is of a personal nature. So, all those issues, and I'm missing one, I can't remember, but you send those students with personal issues to our student assistance team and they will assist them. They will assist them to do a late withdrawal application. They will assist them to do an extension or to get special consideration or to talk to access and inclusion, all that kind of stuff. So yeah, and that's just something that we really do want to emphasize. Yes. Yeah, so that's the services that we recommend. The first one is they're all at anu.edu.au. This is all, you take a photo, write it down. It's also on the handbook. It's also on our website. We put it everywhere as much as we can. We also have flyers that we'll give out at the end of this. But people online, take a screenshot or whatever. Yeah, SA.assistance, that is the student assistance team. We also have the free legal advice. There's an online booking form. And if for whatever reason you don't want to go and speak to the student union, there's also the Dean of Students. Now, this is a part of the ANU, but they are independent. That means that they don't report on, what they do to higher ups in the ANU. It means that they get to act independently and they get to advocate on behalf of individual students that approach them. So generally, I would really recommend giving students the option between all these things, just give them all the information, and people will usually know what is best for them. If you get in a situation where you're really like, this person is really looking for you to come and support them or some kind of thing, and you're finding it really difficult, it's totally okay to come with them to the ANUSA office or email with them or something like that. And that's sort of like a warm referral. It's sort of a soft way of handing over that person to us, and then we can take them off your hands, so to speak. Our office is located on the second floor of the D. Riddell building in Canberra. So that's just above Student Central. It's also just above Kebaba, if that helps. It's also just above Coffee Lab. That side of Canberra. And it just sort of overlooks the grassy area. So you can just head up there. I also do a little plug for the Brian Kenyon Student Space on an unrelated note, which is our free breakfast, lunch, and dinner space, Monday to Friday, every week of the semester. So it's at the same place. It's a great way if people are experiencing hardship, including anyone here, but any students who approach you. It's just a great way for people to get some food in them for free, and it operates every day of the week. Yes. I think we're nearly done. Yeah. Just quickly, there are two types of meetings that you have. First is with the course conveners. I've already been over this. That's pretty straightforward, I think. And the second is with the Associate Dean of Education or equivalent. They will do that differently. I would just recommend making sure you're prepared for both of these. It's good to write down your concerns. It won't have to be a massive list. At any point, you'll have 2 or 3 concerns. When you meet with the Associate Deans of Education, it's totally okay to express concerns, not just with your class, but maybe with how the college operates more broadly. That is what they're there for. They're there to receive feedback, and we do encourage that to happen, and they do encourage it as well. So I sort of already went over this, but that's just to summarize it. I guess, yeah, and I just want to note, some of the stuff that we've worked on is a little more visible for those of you who've been around. In 2020 and 2021, ANUSA campaigned really hard for CRS-CRN, and we got it, which was really awesome. For those who don't know, that's course requirements satisfied or course requirements not satisfied. That is just the acronym we used, where if you had a really hard semester because of COVID, instead of getting a pass or fail on your transcript, you were able to get a CRS or a CRN. And it's just a way to stop a particularly difficult semester in the middle of a pandemic negatively affecting your time at ANU and your transcript and your grades. And that's sort of an example of the kinds of stuff that we campaigned for at the top level, where we're not dealing with just one class, we're sort of trying to deal with the range of issues across the university. And I'll talk about return to campus in the second part of this. Pretty simple what you can do from here. Make sure your email details are up. If you haven't already, make sure you meet with the course convener, read the class rep handbook, join the class representative Facebook group. This should be sent to you by whatever way you got this information, but is also just on Facebook. Just type in class representatives ANUSA semester 2 and you'll be able to find it. It's how we'll communicate with you, any issues that arise, as well as keep you informed about what ANUSA does sort of on a more regular basis. On the ANUSA's page, we also have the course escalation guide. It's just a way to understand what I'm saying today about if you're not sure what kind of issue you deal with or what ANUSA deals with or what student assistance deals with. It's just a really good way to delineate all those types of problems, and it even has examples in there. So it's just on the ANUSA website under class representatives. I would really encourage you to go and have a look at that. On a side note, course conveners should be moving to put those up on their Waddle pages this semester and next semester. So I would encourage you, if you do find it, to show it to your course convener and say, hey, this is just a really good resource ANUSA put together. Like, it would be good if we could post this that way. All students know how to access this. Yes. And yeah, those are some key contacts. My email isn't on there, but it's sa.president, pretty simple. Those are the colleges. I'll just make sure you note what your college is called. They're all the acronyms except for science. Yeah. Cool. I'll give everyone a moment for that. Awesome. All right. I'll give it, yeah, let's do 5 minutes of questions and then I might talk about what else Anusa is doing. Yeah, does anyone have any questions online or in person? Yeah.
I'm not sure how to access the class representative.
Yeah, so that's usually class representative emails aren't usually used for the majority of courses, but which college are you in?
Science.
Yeah, College of Science is, I think, the only one that does it, maybe. That the course convener should be the person who actually administers the handover. If they don't know, just, I would say, get them to email their internal IT division because it's, yeah, that's the people that administer it. Yeah. Yeah. That's on the Anusa website. So if you go to Anusa's website and then you go underneath the tab called advocacy, you know what, I might show you, I'm sorry for people here, I might just, so you go to Anusa, and we go to advocacy, you go down here to class rep, and here you go. That's the two things that you'll need. Both are linked. It's the escalation guide and the handbook. So it's just available on the website. So just for people online, that was just Cheeto saying, you're very welcome to come in person to the Anusa office at any point and just chat with us. Even if you don't have a specific problem, you just want to bounce ideas off or you want to know if there is a problem, just come. You know, someone will be in who will be able to set up a time to meet with one of us, even if we're not there. Yeah. All right. Any questions online or in person? Awesome. All right, so this is sort of the end of the first part. If you want to ask questions, you can email me. If you also want to, you know, head off, that's totally fine. I understand that. But I'll try and race through this. Oh, yeah, we got 15 minutes. So, and I'll just turn the recording off as well because this is not part of the training.